can't say it enough. I'm never giving it up. I just love it so much. I love fishing. Man, I love fishing. I can't say it enough. I'm never giving it up. I just love it so much. I love fishing. Man, I love fishing. That's just what I do. I can't say it enough. I'm never giving it up. I just love it so much. I love fishing. Man, I love fishing. That's just what I do.
From deep in the heart of Central Texas, it's the Best of the Outdoors podcast, brought to you by Texas Fish and Game Magazine, the voice of the Texas outdoor nation. I'm your humble host, Dustin Von Warnke, the hostess with the mostest, joined today at the GoFish Cam Labs area with Adam Kahn. How are you doing today, Adam?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you, and I really enjoy having new guests on the podcast, but I'm very protective about who I have on the podcast because it is something that I want all of my listeners to enjoy and to really get something out of. And I got something out of our conversation last week when we had lunch about using technology in fishing. And you've been doing studies on how people use technology in fishing, how it's therapeutic, how it is beneficial to overall, not just recreation, but overall life. And I'd just like for you to talk about, some of your experiences.
Yeah, sure. So the project started as an exploration of our affiliate angler network. So we have these hundreds of customers who send us videos and love talking to us about how they use the camera. And so I started interviewing them. And what I learned very quickly was there's something going on here.
Sure.
This is we had originally created this camera as kind of a cool thing and a tool, but we didn't really understand how amazing what people were learning from it really was. So as I started to do these interviews, I started to figure out there's an interesting, it's almost like an emerging field of science happening here.
Yeah.
Where people are they're collecting this footage and it's teaching them things that I would have never expected. It's actually pretty amazing.
So the gift of feedback, right? I mean, that's really what it's giving them is the GoFish Cam, for instance, is giving them the gift of feedback and seeing what the fish is doing underwater.
Absolutely. There's feedback from the fish. There's environmental things that people notice. They can see things in structure that they never would have seen before. I mean, a lot of people use fish finders today. That's kind of the
hot thing.
The standard intel collecting device in the world of fishing today. And it's an incredible technology. It was a huge leap forward. But one thing that's kind of emerging from these interviews is people who use fish finders together with underwater fishing cameras.
Yes.
Are actually learning more, and they're actually learning that a lot of times their fish finder isn't actually accurate. Okay. There's something that it sees. One example, I was talking to a guy who was saying he kept finding these huge fish. It turns out it was a small school of bait fish clumped together. The sonar thought it was one bait fish, and so things like that. There's also there was one guy who was over a shipwreck off in the Caribbean, and he put his camera down, and it turns out, no, it actually wasn't a viable fishing spot because the wreck had rusted away so much. All that was left was a couple steel beams.
Wow.
That were the fish finder thought it was a wreck. It thought it was a full structure.
Huge, yeah, right.
But in reality, it wasn't. And so he was looking for sharks. His story is really cool, actually. He has a charter group that takes veterans out as a form of therapy, veterans to help them overcome their PTSD from the military.
Right.
And so he takes them out, and they do a lot of shark fishing around wrecks. And so it's an incredible story, I think, what he's doing. It's really amazing. But I thought it was so interesting that they were sitting over this wreck that they thought was their money ground. They thought it was their honey hole. And it turns out it wasn't even right. It was just small fish because it wasn't the right type of structure.
But it tells you, I mean, video feedback. Like, for instance, when you and I first met each other was this summer at ICAST, right? And what I found was you had videos that were submitted by people that were using your product that basically were showing fish going up and following a bait, or going up and slamming a bait, or going up and investigating it. But you could see feedback, how that all made sense underwater. And I thought that was fascinating because, I mean, yeah, there are other underwater cameras and stuff like that, but yours is in line and actually hangs in, goes in line with the bait, so you can actually see the fish up close and personal as it comes up to the bait.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can see every reaction of every fish that's in the water looking at your bait. You can see exactly what species are down there. The being able to watch the way the bait and the lure behaves in the water, the presentation,
Yes.
and then being able to see the fish behave and react specifically, not just trial and error to see I threw this one out 10 times and I caught one fish versus I caught 2 fish. You can actually see the way they perceive the lure, how far away they were when they really noticed it and came in. If they shy away, if they kind of tail it for a while, you can really start to learn their behavior. And these videos people are getting, they're just incredible. You can understand so much. And here's something that most people don't know is the light level at a different depth in a different water on a different day is going to change. And depending on the color of the lure, this was something I was talking to a guy out of New York who he was dropping his camera down and measuring how far down it was and checking the light levels. And so he was learning, depending on the day and the conditions, one lure is going to be better than the other because the light's penetrating deeper because of all sorts of factors like algae and cloud cover and if there was recent rain, so there's more particulate in the water, and all of these things play into it. But once you get a certain depth, you can't see it from the surface. There's no way to know.
It's light transmission. It's how light gets through the water.
Yes.
Right,
So,
is what you're saying, right?
So
Okay.
something he was telling me that I thought was just fascinating. Near the top of the water, or when it's really bright and the light penetrates, that's when the colors start to matter, because then you actually have enough light to tell what's going on.
Okay.
But as you get deeper and the colors start to wash out because there's just not enough light getting down there, it changes. So he was figuring out he would put a lure as far away as he could possibly get from the camera without losing sight of
Sure,
it.
sure.
And then he would test different colors to see which one popped the most.
I see.
And his theory was, and he proved it with video footage showing this worked, was if I can see it, the more I can see it, the more the fish can see it.
Yeah.
And so that was the big thing. It wasn't necessarily that they were attracted to a color. It was they could see it. The visibility was there.
Right.
And that's something at different heights and light penetration levels that it changes every day you're on the water. And without being able to actually see what it is, you're just going to be guessing.
Yeah. And it takes some of the guesswork out of it with using technology. And in this case, not necessarily fish finders or depth finders or anything like that have temperature feedback and all that other stuff and sonar and all those things. This is multimedia feedback, right? It's video in its purest form attached to the line. So if you're going after something that's, a marlin or something like that in open water, blue water, deep sea, or you're up close fishing for a redfish or a trout like we have here in Texas, whatever the case, maybe a flounder, you get to see real, not really real time. I mean, how does the GoFish program work as far as the feedback on your phone?
So the camera is wireless, so that means that's how it can attach close to the line, close to the hook. That's how it keeps a view on the hook at all times. Wireless transmission can't go through water. There is no technology currently that exists.
Right.
So when it's underwater, it's not going to be transmitting live stream to your phone.
That's good enough. Yeah.
So when you reel back in, that's when you can connect it to your phone and review.
It
what
downloads
happened.
the data every time it's out of the water.
Yes.
That's cool.
So you can connect it to your phone right there on the water and review the last cast or the last. If you're trolling, you can reel it back in and see what happened.
Huh.
We actually have a lot of lure companies do R&D with the camera, because they can see one, how their lure is moving, whether it's doing what they thought it would when they made a design change. But the other thing that they do is I know a charter captain who was testing lures when he was trolling, he used an umbrella, well, not lures, but using an umbrella rig.
Sure. Yeah,
and he was testing colors, just a straight up A/B test. He rigged half up blue and half up yellow, and he wanted to see what was causing a strike
on the same rig.
On the same rig.
Okay, so they could have a choice then between the different colors.
So he was watching the footage of seeing which ones they were attracted to.
Sure.
And he found out, well, the yellows just weren't doing anything. The blues were what was bringing everything in. So then he changed it all over to blue, and all of a sudden, bam, he's getting just smashed left and right, because that's what they were interested in.
Sure.
And the lure companies do that for R&D. They'll try out different things and figure out, okay, this is the lure for salmon in freshwater because of 1,000 reasons, but that I've learned that this works best, and
sure.
this is a story I've heard over and over again. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's cool. I mean, that's really neat, because it kind of gives you, it gives you insight that you may not already have. You can guess what's going on down there if they're interested in the lure, or whatever the case may be, but I can just see a lot of different aspects for that. But the other thing that you and I talked about when we had lunch is, something that I'm interested in is the therapy of fishing, because, I'm part of Crosswater Outfitters, as most of my listeners know, fishing ministry, for catfish and striped bass and white bass. And basically, we see the benefit every time we do an event of how fishing can change lives in a positive way, as far as the therapeutic side of it, not necessarily the part of it, that's just fun, So, what have you learned about that?
Oh yeah, I was amazed and inspired by some of the stories I heard. I talked to a number of people who were in the military. I had earlier talked about the post traumatic stress disorder.
Sure.
And the therapeutic effect there. This is a really common thing. It's amazing to hear these stories about people who had some sort of traumatic event. I talked to one guy who was diagnosed with a chronic illness, and he fell into a deep depression because he suddenly had to live with this great burden on his life, and fishing was what pulled him out of it.
Oh wow!
He went out, and he realized that he could have joy again, and fishing. It really moved me to hear these stories.
Whoa.
It's so I guess fundamental, this experience. I mean, you look back at fishing's been part of the human condition for forever.
It's how we ate back in the day.
Yeah, I think there's something about it that clicks with people and is able to penetrate, and it's very fundamental, I think.
There's almost something native about it, like we were designed to fish. I don't know if that's even a thing, but I mean, I just thought about that. I was just kind of like, if that was something that we were born, to do at some visceral level. I mean, as far as to go and hunt and gather, or go and hunt and fish, or go and, it's just, that's the kind of stuff amazes me about the human condition, like you were saying, but also the human experience.
Yeah, I think that there's a fundamental element that I think is really interesting. It's absolutely universal. I've talked to dozens and dozens and dozens of people, and you hear the same story. It's always different, right? Everyone has a different experience, but the same theme underlies it. This is how they connect with themselves. It's very much an internal growth and mental health component, and I think it's just incredible.
Well, we've seen soldiers literally that have been hardened from the war, and I talked about this in a couple of podcasts ago, but people that have been completely hardened by, the Iraqi war, whatever the Gulf, the older, Gulf War, the Desert Storms and that kind of stuff, or even the Vietnam wars, and how fishing has softened their hearts. And it just really I didn't know that when I got into all the ministry stuff that I do, but I was just like, wow, it's almost like they're communing with nature by just being out on the water, on a boat, or just going out. One of the first events I ever attended was 2012, and the guys were just going out on kayaks and that kind of stuff. And I mean, it was really, really a lot of fun. And the one thing you've got here is some of the surveys that you've had, which I'm very fascinated by. Some of the surveys that you've done on on how people are using fishing, some of the things that you're finding in the interviews. And talk real quick about what you did as far as this interview process that you did with kind of surveys.
Yeah, so I started the surveys with a very simple question, and it was what has underwater footage taught you that allowed you to make, and it was very broad, allowed you to make some sort of decision to get some sort of result, and describe that to me. And so I tried to keep it very broad and very fundamental to let it just come naturally. And the variety of response was just incredible.
Sure.
The different ways people are using underwater footage to change the way that they fish. I picked out some themes that I'd like to share
Please.
that were very common. One thing that was really interesting was there are some things that people think are fishing gospel, that they either had a mentor, or when they were fishing early on they learned something
They were taught,
or they taught, or they read, or they saw, or maybe it was a fishing show, and they thought that was the reality, and so they always based their style or their strategy off of that fundamental fact. And then they sent down a camera, got footage, and learned, oh well, that's not right at all. That thing that I knew wasn't real. It was a coincidence. And one guy was telling me how easy it is to be fooled by coincidence. When you're doing something and something seems to be happening, you're missing a huge amount of information about how and why that happened. So you could be completely misunderstanding the situation.
Right.
And people are, I was talking to one guy, he was a tournament fisherman, and he had used the same style because his mentor had taught him
how to do it.
Yeah, they would fish together in these tournaments, and they were wrong. And he figured out, oh my God, this is not what I'm doing. It's not working.
Right.
And so he changed it, and he went out fishing another tournament with this mentor of his, and he said, let's do this different thing. And the guy said, what, are you crazy? That's not how to do it. And guess what? They won the tournament because they changed things.
Wow. It was a game changer, I guess, in a way. I mean, just to use the word, across the board, it's a game changer. And, the thing is, it's true, a lot of times we are taught stuff, and it's not necessarily what is all the time is what we speculated, and what our mentors and teachers have speculated is going on underwater. But yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. When you're looking at like a novice angler, the what you see underwater can help you learn faster, because it kind of gives context to what's happening. So you're not making those correlation mistakes when you're trying to, there's a coincidence that you think is some sort of specific action, and it's not reality.
Yeah.
So there's a really good learning component where you're avoiding those big missteps that might stick with you for the rest of your fishing life. And so that's a big thing. And experienced anglers, they can take it to a whole nother level, because once you have that base of knowledge, you can start to pick out these little details.
Yeah.
And something that emerged as just kind of a universal trend in the way people are analyzing footage is these little details matter a lot. The tiniest little things. I was talking to one guy who was he was fishing for salmon, and he was using worms, and he would cast the worm out, and he would bring it back, and it would be gone. So he thought that his worms were getting taken, and he just wasn't catching. So he changed his hooks, and he changed his line, and he changed everything, and he couldn't figure it out. Well, finally he used a camera, and he was able to see what in fact was happening wasn't that the fish were taking his worms. It was that the worms were being ripped off of the hook by an oyster bed, and they were tearing them off. And so he got an egg bag, and he put the worms in the bag. And all of a sudden, he just started getting slammed left and right
because the bait stayed on the hook.
Yeah, he wasn't losing his bait anymore. So he thought it was. He tried a dozen different things, but being able to actually see what it is, if he had just done that right from the beginning, he would have saved weeks of his time.
Lots of worms.
A lot of worms. A whole lot of worms. Yeah,
that's good.
It's there's this really cool. The footage for a novice is this great foundational learning tool, and for an advanced angler, it's just these little details that you can learn and take advantage of. Just they make all the difference in the world.
Yeah. Well, and it excites me. I must say, can I just say, it excites me that that you brought an outline to this podcast of notes and stuff like that, because so few people do. But it's like I always try to talk it's from the heart, but you've actually have experience documented from people, from interviewing people, and I just think it's so cool that you brought that. So
well, the interviews that I've done almost 30 of these now, and we collected those in just a couple of weeks, because basically everybody who uses underwater cameras and has this footage learns something. So they all have a story to tell.
Right.
And
something different in a lot of cases, too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And
unique.
And what I get really excited about is we don't just have the stories, right? We have the video, because they've kept it. Because they learned something, they got excited, it had value to them, they wanted to keep it. So we can actually teach people what they learned with the footage that they collected. So telling their story can help all anglers learn how to use underwater footage, because it's really fundamental. But I mean, there's a lot to learn. Understanding the light levels and the way the fish are behaving. I really think it's going to emerge as a field of study for fishermen. It's a whole new, just like it takes years to really learn how to read the reading on a fish finder, to know that little Christmas tree shaped blob is a pike versus a muskie versus a bait fish versus whatever. That takes a long time to learn, real expertise.
It takes experience.
Yeah,
for sure.
So being able to analyze the video, there's some things that are very fundamental and obvious that will immediately improve your fishing game. But then over time, I think there's going to emerge an entire field of science of analyzing. I was talking to a professor in Sweden, actually, who was studying perch with cameras, and so he was putting it down to see how they were behaving with. He was using chickpeas, and he's kind of a cheap ass, and he was replacing his real chickpeas with fake cheap.
It's like us using corn, but using fake corn.
He was using Fakos, and after a couple weeks, he realized they weren't showing up anymore because they had learned that his bait was fake.
Oh, geez, they found him out.
Yeah, they figured it out. So the fish. People think fish are dumb, but they learn, that it was fake, and so they stopped coming by. And he all of a sudden realized that he had made a big blunder because they were ignoring. They were going and picking out the real bait, and then eventually they just stopped coming because they didn't want all the fake bait.
Wow. I mean, it's funny because the fish figured him out, They weren't going to buy into the lie, that it was, but I love it. Yeah, he was just being cheap. I thought it was funny. But, I mean, it really, because it takes so long a lot of times to educate yourself and the experience and that kind of stuff, this is just an asset and a tool. And that's one thing I'm big about on this podcast, guys, that are listening to this. I care about new and innovative and ways to help you do what you do in the outdoors better. That's really where my heart is on why I do this podcast, why I've done it for 4 years. And it's been going strong, and a lot of the podcasts have come and gone. I'm still here, but I mean, the thing I'm saying is that having guests like Adam here is really what I'm about, because this is a way to be a game changer for your fishing life. These GoFish Cams aren't that expensive either, right? As far as the cost and everything like that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. They retail for $239.99. Yeah, and it's people when people think of them as just like a toy to capture video, then that does seem a little steep sometimes. I can understand that, but the way people use them, it's a tool. This is a vital piece of equipment, and people who have $10,000 electronic setups on their boats they're still learning new things that they otherwise would not have seen.
Yeah.
It's for a lot of people, it's like the natural progression and extension to be used in concert with a fish finder. It takes that intel and it makes it that much better.
Intel, that's the word I've been looking for all morning. Intelligence. Yeah, I mean that feedback of what's going on underneath the water and stuff that we'd like to know. Stuff inquiring minds that fish want to know. Stuff that professional anglers have wanted to know for years. We're making that, with this product. Y'all are making this a reality.
Yeah, and intel is universal. If you have more information, you can learn faster, you can fish better, you can fish smarter.
That's great. That's awesome. All right, continue with your list. Sorry, I don't mean to do.
No, it's fine. There's a lot of really good stuff in here. Something that I thought was great was people understanding fish behavior.
Sure.
Not just what worked to catch them, but actually how they're behaving. For example, I was talking to a guy who he fishes for striper year round, and he actually does a lot of tournament fishing, and what he's learned is it's for his waters, and it's always different for different waters, which is another really interesting thing. But for his waters, they have to stay in the cold water. They always want to be where the water's colder. So as it heats up in the summer, they normally in the summer stay in rivers, and as it heats up, they start to slowly migrate up into lakes, and so
into the deeper parts of the lakes.
Into the deeper parts of the lakes.
It's cooler,
and so the bait fish that they're eating in the rivers is different from the lakes. So not only are they moving around, so he's using underwater footage to better track them and keep up with them, but they're changing their eating habits because the bait fish that they're on top of are different at different times of the year.
Sure.
So not just what lures am I showing them, but why am I showing them those lures?
Sure.
That's the question he can answer now, is to understand that. I was talking to a guy who he was fishing in kind of a colder area in Canada, and the bugs that came out in the early spring season, the types of insects that were coming out, that was the key, because it was if I remember correctly, it was like mosquito larvae and some water beetles.
Okay.
And so because he knew what at that time of year and he could see what they were going for, he was able to tailor his approach. And so during that time of the year, he was just getting smashed. He was just slamming. He was
hooking up
because he knew exactly what they were thinking. He could understand. He could get in the mind of a fish and understand their behavior.
The brain of a fish.
Exactly.
Yes, that's good.
Yeah. The other thing, especially that striper story, when he's following those migrations, he was saying that it used to take him 3 to 4 trips to find them when they were migrating, because he would troll up and down the river, and then eventually he would get hit up on something. He would fish for days to try to find them, and he said he spent so much money on just gas alone, trying to find these striper as they migrated. But then with the camera, he would drop the camera down, he would check
no bait or anything, just
drop the camera down and see what's down there, and then he'd reel it back in, he'd check the video, he'd say, oh, they're not here. He'd go up a quarter mile and he'd drop it down again, and he would just leapfrog up the river, and
a lot more efficient.
Yeah, he said he can do in 4 hours what used to take him 4 trips to find him.
That's a really cool. That makes a lot of sense, because you save gas. It's paid for itself in just one trip, probably, with the gas that he saved. You know what I'm saying? Just that type of technology. If you make the investment in it, it'll pay for itself, right?
It's a tool. I really, if you're out there thinking, well, I could buy a new rod or I could buy a new reel, I really would recommend consider underwater footage, because the benefit, the short and long term benefits of this footage, you can learn a whole new perspective. You might learn that something you've been doing that was catching fish a quarter of the time when they hooked up is completely wrong. I was talking to a guy who was using a worm harness, and he was getting hit left and right, but when he saw the footage, it turns out that his hooks are wrong. They weren't actually hooking up. And so he changed, he completely threw it out, because he was getting interest, but he wasn't able to hook him up, and it just wasn't working. He switched to a crankbait, and now he's just getting hit after hit after hit.
Because it's better to hook up on a crankbait, easier to hook up on a crankbait than a worm harness. Okay, that makes sense. So
similar amount of interest, he realized, with the crankbait. He thought the worm was this amazing thing, but he was only getting hooked up about 25% of the time.
Yeah.
And with the crankbait, they were just slamming it. It was a predatory response. They were coming in, they were slamming it, and he was getting them hooked up almost every time that they hit his bait.
Oh, yeah. Wow. That's cool. It's interesting. I just, years ago, I would have never thought something like this existed like this, as far as, but even the thing that really sold me on wanting to do an interview with you is when we were at ICAST, and I'm just, my mind is drawn to the footage you have on both sides of the booth of the TV monitors that are showing this in action, and showing this muskie come up and follow and then slam, or the shark that comes up and follows and then turns away, or whatever the case may be. You get to see all that. I mean, it's great. I just, and on some people, look, guys, some people will say I'm easily amused, okay? But I really think if it's going to help you, I want to showcase it on the show. If it's going to be of value to you guys. And I do a lot of solo shows where it's all about, stuff I can teach that I've learned. And I just learn enough to teach sometimes, But, I mean, I really, really, see the value in something like this, which is why I had to have you on.
Well, I think it's an emerging technology that's really shaking things up. It's pretty disruptive, and as far as taking what's known, the gospel, and turning it on its head, because you finally can actually see what's going on. Yeah. I think that story is amazing, and I want to share it.
Sure.
And I think people get it once they see the footage, once they actually see that muskie following and then slamming, they get it, because I mean, I'll give you another anecdote. I've got them.
I love it. This is great
stuff. My pockets are full of them.
This is a great interview, Adam. You're doing well.
So. Oh, well, thanks. Well, there was a guy who he learned that, and this is kind of one of those more advanced techniques. He's a pretty experienced guy. He's a charter captain, and his goal is to make sure that his customers catch as many giant fish as possible,
sure,
so that they talk to their friends about how great his charter ship is, and he gets more bookings.
Of course, and I work with a lot of charter captains too, so I understand exactly how that works.
So his goal in life is to hook up as much as possible, and what he learned from the camera was if he would troll fast, that was what attracted them, but they wouldn't bite. It's always different. Every water, every species, even every day, things change. But with his species, he was learning that when he trolled fast, that was what hooked him in. Pardon the pun. That was what brought their attention in and got them to start following. But they wouldn't strike. And then he would stop the boat. He would start slowing down, and they would hit. And so he was able to see that the fast troll attracted them.
Yeah,
it attracted them. The slow troll wouldn't attract them. The fast troll attracted them.
But the slow
then he would
trolls
slow down.
Okay.
So he started pulsing his speed, going fast to attract and then slow to hook, and they just started slamming it.
That's awesome. Wow. What a great. I mean, but again, that's a gift of feedback.
Exactly.
Which, in business world isn't always that important, but I mean, when it comes to fishing, it's everything in a lot of ways, because you get to learn, and experience with the fish is experiencing too.
Yeah,
that's fascinating.
Fishing has always been a world of trial and error. It takes decades to master, because it's incredibly complicated. I don't think people understand how complicated fishing really is.
Especially from the outside looking in. People that don't understand fishing, it is a science, it is an art form, it is something you have to dial into to get. And then the variables are massive, because you have different lakes, different lures working on different lakes. Catfish, for instance, Roy Simmons up in Richland Chambers uses Danny King's punch bait, and then he's one of my hotspot reporters for the magazine. And then Weldon Kirk, he uses CJ's punch bait on Lake Somerville because it works better on that lake. And it's just like, it takes years to figure all that stuff out, I mean, and this just helps you do that a little bit quicker.
Yeah, it's and one guy, and I'll never forget this quote, because I thought it was really powerful. He was saying he learned in a couple outings what had taken him about 5 years to learn. Because being able to actually see it, it's not trial and error, it's not guesswork. You see it. You can actually watch what's happening.
And as soon as you have it reeled up, it downloads to your phone.
Right there. And you can make a change right then and see the result right then. And so instead of just wondering what of a million different factors are causing the result that you're getting. And so even if you make a change, you don't really know why that change was the trigger. But when you can see it, then you can understand it. And that right there, that little piece is kind of fundamental to all of this. Being able to see that feedback loop where you didn't have it before.
Right.
And it's helping new people learn faster. It's helping pros get better. Just talk about kids. Kids are able to see, even if they didn't catch something, they're able to see what was down there, and that gets them excited. So a lot of the charter captains I've talked to who take a lot of kids out are telling me how great the cameras are for getting them excited about fishing. Because suddenly it's not just this unknown that is really hard and they're not catching anything. They can show them that lunker that's just that's down there.
Lurking beneath the
it was,
deep,
they could see that it was following their lure, and they want to come back because they want to catch it. And
Yeah, that's cool.
they want to make that.
It gets
that
them
next
hooked.
step.
I mean, I hate to use that. they get hooked on fishing, but I mean, I didn't even think about the kids' mindset. I'm just kind of thinking of the adult angler out there, that's been grinding for years and stuff, and this has helped them. But for kids, it's a game changer too, because they have technology with their phones that they get to work through and see it work and see that gift of feedback right away.
Yeah, I've got
awesome.
I've got a friend named Brady who's out of Georgia, and he loves fishing with his family. He's got just a beautiful family. They always fish together, and when you put the camera in bobber mode, it floats on the surface. You can live stream because it's on the surface.
On the surface, yeah.
So he'll when he's fishing with his family, he'll put it in bobber mode and give his phone to his kids, and they can watch as he fishes. And so it's this
cool.
this joint thing that they get to do together. And we got some pictures of them doing it. I just think it's amazing.
You can see a striper come up and hit that top water, in bobber mode, I guess.
Oh yeah,
right?
oh yeah.
That's kinda cool.
You get to see
Hit that
everything.
plug. Yeah.
No, we the bobber mode's pretty interesting. That's one way that fly fishermen actually use the cameras.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, because
you'd
think there's no way to use a camera for fly fishing, and really there isn't. It's
heavy. I mean, it's not heavy, but
you can't swing this thing around. You're going to kill somebody. But what they'll do is they'll put it on a hand line. They won't put a hook on it. They'll just toss it out and use it as a above view, a second pair of eyes on the water to sight fish, basically.
That's a good idea too. That's a really good. I just was thinking, I've had Bill Carey on the show before, Striper Express out of Lake Texoma, and he talks about the explosive topwater striper bite because it looks like the water's boiling underneath it. And I was fishing with Roy Simmons on Richland Chambers a couple of years ago now, and we were following the white bass and hybrid run. It looked like the water was on fire. It was boiling so much, and it's because those fish were basically up there, feeding on pushing shad to the top, and you could throw a bare hook in the water, dude. I mean, it was that good. And it was like we throw a spoon through a topwater, a popper. I mean, whatever the case may be, whatever topwater you could throw, they'd bite on top. You throw it, through the group of fish and through the group of shad, they'd hit that. I mean, we would have a jig that would be like 18 inches up from the slab, and we would catch on both hooks.
Oh my God. That's incredible.
So fishing like that, I'm like, that's where you really need a camera to see all of them going after the same bait,
Yeah, we've seen a couple double hookups, and we're waiting for our first triple hookup on an umbrella. But
oh, your umbrella rig, that's cool.
We're hoping to see it. It's going to happen eventually. Yeah, we got a couple double. We saw one recently. It was a barracuda. It was a high speed trolling in salt water, and they hooked up a barracuda, and then a second barracuda flies out of nowhere and just takes a bite out of the side of the first one, and actually it tears it off. It tears it off the hook. So the whole thing. It's one of my favorite videos I've ever seen from an underwater camera, and it would have never. You'd never known because it would have just been an empty hook if you had reeled it back in. You never would have seen it.
That's cool. That's special. That's stuff you don't just hear about or see about all the time. But getting that real time, not really real time, but close to real time video footage of what's going on. When I first met Brandon Austin was like, when did this start? I know you're newer to this, but 2016 is that when?
Yeah, 2015.
2015. All right. So I met him in 2016 when he was still in the midst of launching everything and getting the funding and everything together. And he told me, he said, it's not so much what happens when you have the camera, but it's so much what happens after you pull that camera up and look at the footage, and you're like, that could have been, the fish almost hit it, and just that whole what might have been, kind of thing. But that's fun. That's what makes fishing, I mean, and that you can adjust your grind. You can adjust your and catch more too.
And I'm a pretty competitive guy, so for me, there's another piece which is a little bit more silly, but to me, I mean, it matters. Which is, I can actually show you the one that got away.
Yeah.
Right. I don't have to. I don't.
That's
have to
good.
Just,
that's good. You don't have to just tell the story about the one that's this big.
Yeah, it's this big. Yeah. Well, no, it actually was that big, and I can prove it.
That's good. You've got another thing starting in about 5 minutes. So anything you want to wrap up about? I don't want to keep you that much longer.
No, I think we kind of hit all the high points. Oh, the last thing for all you anglers out there who are frustrated because your style isn't working or something, the fish are down there.
Yeah,
That's
for real. Yeah,
they're there. They're looking at your bait. They know what's going on. Basically, every time you cast, trust me, we've seen enough of this footage. They're down there. So just keep trying, keep changing things. You'll get them eventually.
that's good. I mean, that's great advice because a lot of times we'll have a slow day and we're just like, they just aren't there. You know?
They're there. They're there.
Unless you're fishing the shallows in the middle of winter, I mean, chances are they're in the deep. I mean, unless you're fishing the deep in the middle of the summer, where they're not, and vice versa. It's just, if you know where they approximately are and use something like an underwater camera to help you find and locate, I mean, the rest is just your skill.
Yeah, I was talking to a guy who was trying to understand the lunar patterns, and
right.
And during the lunar cycle, the trout were really lethargic, and they just weren't aggressive. And so he had always thought that, but now he had video evidence showing when he's one time of the month they're really aggressive and they just hit his bait right away.
Sure.
Other time of the month they're not even feeding; they're just down there, just lazing around. And so it's not necessarily
doing trout things.
Yeah, just being trout.
Being trout.
So just don't despair. The fish are down there; they're waiting. You just have to figure out how they tick, and you'll catch them.
That's good. That's really good. GoFish Cam contact, Facebook, Twitter,
yep,
all that stuff.
Check out the GoFish Cam website to learn more. There's a YouTube channel. There's just GoFish Cam. You find it, we'll be there. There's so many amazing videos out there, and we're going to be adding more as these stories come together. So you can actually see some of these things in action.
And it works via wireless, via Wi-Fi, correct? As far as the Wi-Fi signal that the device gives off to the phone, or does it work through Bluetooth, or how does it work?
Yeah, so the camera has a wireless signal that it projects. So what that means is it's not, let's say you're out in the middle of nowhere, you don't have cell service. It still works.
Yeah.
The camera itself is actually creating the Wi-Fi.
The Wi-Fi signal. That's what I was asking.
And your
I've
phone
worked with
connects
plenty
to
of
that.
things like that.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
cool.
so you when it's above the surface, within 30 feet, you can stream to your phone.
Right.
When you connect to the phone with your with the camera on the app, you can change settings. You can change all sorts of things to, if you're more interested in scouting and less interested in capturing HD video, you can lower the HD setting and get a longer battery life.
Right.
There's all sorts of things you can do, and you can review right there on the boat, or there's a micro SD card you can plug it into your computer, or pull it off with a USB cable, and review the footage at home. So it kind of depends on the style. But some people will review it right there in the water and make a change right there. Some people prefer to go back and review it at home when they're comfortable on their couch and just go through all the footage that they collected.
Yeah. And the cool thing about it is that it's not your average Joe, product that's just been done before or been, it's something that's unique, and the way that y'all do it at GoFish is unique, and that's why I wanted to have you on, because I wanted to get you some outside of the box content on this show, because last episode I talked about fishing, hunting and fishing and the outdoor lifestyle as it relates to fitness and health and eating what you harvest and that kind of stuff. But here, this is about how to make you a better grinder, a better hustler, a better angler, getting out there and finding the fish and helping you do that quicker and more effective, and my other word, efficient.
Exactly. Yeah. GoFish Cam's an American company based out of Austin, Texas.
Yep, that's where we are right now, is Austin, Texas, a little southwest or southeast of where I live. So
yep. It's an amazing new technology. The field is we're really cutting edge here. The field is emerging, and these products are just changing things. People are they're seeing them as the next evolution of the fish finder. It's a leap forward, and
that's cool.
I just want people to understand how valuable and useful this really is.
I mean, this has been great. You've been a great interview. So do you want anybody to contact you at all, Facebook page or anything like that, or do you just want them to go to the GoFish?
Yeah, if anybody has questions about,
that's what I mean,
if they have questions about the camera or the footage, or just want to talk about fishing, you can reach out to me. My email is adam@gofishcam.com.
Cool.
I'll answer your questions. I'm happy to do so.
That's
if you reach out to us, you call our number, we'll pick up. It goes straight to our phones. So if you want to talk to me directly, just the number on our website goes right to us.
Oh, cool. That's great. That's awesome. So accessible. That's a nice thing I like about you is that we've had lunch last week, and I just really enjoyed the time learning more about how this is benefited. I had to share it with my listeners. So thank you so much for doing this.
There's a business philosophy that underlies this, which is customer service, direct communication. I want to talk to every single person who uses a camera. I want to make sure that they're having a good experience, that they understand how to use it, and that they come back again and again because this is valuable to them.
Yeah. Oh, that's solid. That's great. That's awesome. Anything else to say before we go?
No, I just want to thank you for the time.
Thank you for the time.
I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak about this. Yeah. I'm a super nerd for this. I get really excited about it.
I love that about you, man.
So yeah, I do appreciate it.
This is good. And the other thing that you're looking at doing is doing some written work too. That we may showcase at some point, as far as just getting out the benefits of video feedback for fishing and that kind of stuff. And just this is kind of your passion, as far as this goes. And I could tell that the first time I met you, and I was like, this guy I've got to have on the podcast. So I just kind of felt that deep in your soul was that was kind of where you were on that. Your heart was on that.
I want to teach people how to use underwater footage. I want to show them what people have learned so they can try it out.
Sure.
We're developing a series of much. I mean, we've been talking broadly with some anecdotes, but when you really get into the details about some specific things that people are doing, that's when you start to learn.
Sure.
And that's where I want to teach people those lessons.
And it works all over the place. I mean, it can work saltwater, it can work freshwater, it can work deep shore or deep sea or inshore or fresh, Great Lakes or Texas lakes or whatever the case may be.
They're basically indestructible. We test every unit down to 500 feet depth. We test a number down to 728 feet in our pressure chamber.
Wow.
And we've actually dropped them down a lot further, and they're fine. They can go down as deep as you're generally ever going to want to use them.
Right.
And they're very robust. We designed this thing to bounce off rocks and logs and whatever you're doing.
Durable.
It's powerful. The connection point can handle 1,000 pounds of tension. So when it's rigged up, you're not gonna worry about it.
That's good. That's really good. And like I said, I invite people to check it out. And you gave me a little mini tour of the facility that you have. I'm on location again, guys, here with my mobile mic. Just basically talking about how important this kind of stuff is, and at a new location this week. So thank you guys for hanging in there with me, and thanks again, Adam.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much again listening to this. Check out our 3 newsletters. You've got Tactical Practical, our Tactical Tuesday. You've got Wilderness Wednesday, I think is what it's called now. And then the Thursday Texas State of the Outdoor Nation newsletter. You can check out 3 times a week. Those 3 newsletters, fishgame.com. Check out all the podcasts, subscribe, leave us a 5-star rating, all that other fun stuff I got to say at the end. And thank you guys so much for watching, reading, and listening. Have an awesome day in the outdoors. We'll see you next time.